The envelope arrived on a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were always quiet in our house. Mom worked the evening shift at the diner, and I had the apartment to myself after school. I was 17, 3 months from graduation, and the only thing I cared about was whether Northwestern would accept my early decision application. But hey, before you go, quick question for everyone watching. Where are you tuning in from, and what time is it there? Drop it in the comments. I'm curious how far this story is traveling, and if this hit you the way it hit me when I first heard it, hit that like and subscribe. The envelope was thick, cream-colored, with no return address. My name was typed in the center, Elena Voss. Not the messy handwriting of college mail, not the bright logos of scholarship programs. Just my name, clean and cold. I opened it at the kitchen table, the same table where Mom had told me, 10 years earlier, that I was adopted. You're special, Elena. Your birth mother couldn't keep you, but she loved you enough to give you to me. That was the story. Simple. Clean. No details, no paperwork I was ever allowed to see. Mom said the records were sealed, that it was a closed adoption, that I should be grateful for the life I had instead of chasing ghosts. I was grateful. I was also careful. Mom worked double shifts to keep us in a decent school district. She never dated, never complained, never asked for help. She was a saint with tired eyes and rough hands, and I loved her for every sacrifice she never named. But the envelope on that Tuesday changed everything. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a photocopy, grainy but legible. At the top, a letterhead I didn't recognize, Hartwell Family Services, Des Moines, Iowa. Below that, a contract, dated 18 years ago, 2 signatures at the bottom. One was my mother's, Margaret Voss. The other was a name I didn't know, Dr. Arthur Calloway. And in the middle of the page, in plain language that made my stomach drop, was a single line, transfer of guardianship and associated rights. Consideration, $47,000. Subject, female infant, 6 pounds 3 ounces, born April 14th. I read it 3 times. Then I walked to the bathroom and threw up. Not adoption. Sale. My mother didn't adopt me. She sold me. Or someone sold me to her. The language was deliberately vague. Transfer of guardianship, associated rights, consideration, but the number was specific. $47,000 for a 6-pound baby. I didn't confront her that night. I couldn't. I sat on my bed with the contract hidden under my mattress and stared at the ceiling until the sun came up. I needed to know who Arthur Calloway was before I accused my mother of something that would destroy us both. The internet gave me nothing at first. Hartwell Family Services didn't exist anymore. The building in Des Moines was now a payday loan center, according to Google Street View. Dr. Arthur Calloway was a common enough name, scattered across medical directories and academic papers. Then I found him. Northwestern University, Department of Sociology. Dr. Arthur Calloway, Ph.D., specialized in family systems and child welfare policy. He had a faculty photo, silver hair, sharp blue eyes, a smile that looked practiced. He was 63. He had taught at Northwestern for 22 years. He was also, according to the course catalog, teaching SOC 201, Introduction to Family Studies in the fall. Freshman year. My freshman year. I applied to Northwestern because it was the best school that accepted me. Because Mom pushed me to reach higher than she ever could. Because the financial aid package was generous, and the sociology department was ranked in the top 10. I didn't know I was walking into his classroom until the first day of fall semester. I sat in the 3rd row, middle seat, the same place I always chose, close enough to see, far enough to not be called on first. The room filled with 200 freshmen, all buzzing with orientation energy. I was nervous in the normal way, the excited way, new notebooks, new city, new life. Then he walked in. Dr. Calloway moved like a man who owned the space around him. He set his briefcase on the desk with precision. He wrote his name on the whiteboard in perfect cursive. He turned to face us, And when his eyes swept the room, they stopped on me for exactly 1 second too long. I told myself I was imagining it. Paranoia from the envelope, from the secret I carried. Every professor looks at students. Every teacher makes eye contact. But he smiled. Not at the room. At me. "Welcome to Family Studies," he said. "By the end of this semester, you'll understand that family is not biology. Family is economics. Family is power. And sometimes, family is the most expensive investment you'll ever make." The class laughed. I didn't. I spent that semester watching him. Not in the way students watch professors. Not for grading cues or lecture hints. I watched the way he watched me. He never called on me directly, but he always knew where I sat. If I moved to a different seat, his eyes found me within minutes. If I raised my hand, he called on someone else, but he nodded as if acknowledging something private. Once, after class, he stopped me in the hallway. "Elena Voss," he said, reading my name from the roster he wasn't holding. "Unusual name. Eastern European?" "I don't know," I said. "I'm adopted." His smile didn't falter, but something flickered behind his eyes. Recognition? Satisfaction? "Adoption is a fascinating system," he said. "The market forces, the supply and demand, the way value is assigned. You should consider writing your final paper on it." I nodded and walked away. My hands were shaking. I didn't write about adoption. I wrote about food insecurity in single-parent households. Something safe, something that wouldn't make him look at me like that again. But he kept looking. Sophomore year, I declared sociology as my major. Not because of him, because of the subject, because I wanted to understand systems, because I wanted to work in policy and fix the broken things I had survived. But declaring the major meant more. Callaway. He taught 3 of the required courses. In SOC 310, Juvenile Justice, he discussed the commodification of children in foster care systems. He used words like placement fees and administrative costs and perverse incentives. He never looked at me when he said them, but I felt every word like a finger on my spine. In SOC 34. Research methods. He assigned a project on longitudinal studies. I chose to study educational outcomes for adopted children. When I presented my findings, higher achievement rates, but increased risk of identity disruption, he asked only one question. "Ms. Voss, in your research, did you find that the adoptive parent's investment level correlated with the child's performance? Investment level? Financial? Emotional? Time? The more a parent invests, the more return they expect. Basic economics." "I found that love isn't economics, Dr. Callaway." The class went quiet. He smiled. "Perhaps not," he said. "But economics is always love, Ms. Voss. Always." I started keeping a journal that year. Not for class, a private record of every interaction, every look, every strange coincidence. Callaway was always where I was. Not stalking, not overtly, just present. At department mixers, at guest lectures, at the coffee shop near my apartment where I studied on Saturday mornings. He never approached me in those spaces, but he was always there, always aware. Junior year, I applied for a research fellowship. It was competitive. Only 3 students selected. Full funding for senior thesis work, mentorship from a faculty member. I applied because I needed the money, because Mom's diner wages couldn't cover another year of rent, because I was drowning in loans and pride. I didn't expect to get it. I didn't expect him to be the selecting committee chair. He called me into his office on a Friday afternoon. The room smelled of old books and leather. Diplomas lined the walls. Northwestern, Chicago, Oxford. Family photos on the desk. A wife, 2 adult children, a golden retriever. Normal, successful, respectable. "Your application is strong, Ms. Voss," he said, not looking up from my file. "Your GPA is exceptional. Your recommendations are glowing. But I have one concern." "What concern?" He looked up then. His blue eyes were colder than in the faculty photo. Your personal statement mentions wanting to work in child welfare policy, reform, protection, but you never explain why. I should have lied. Should have said something generic about wanting to help children, about believing in systemic change. But I was tired. Tired of the looks, the hints, the weight of a secret I couldn't prove. Because I think the system is broken, Dr. Calloway. Because I think children are treated like property. Because I think there are people who profit from that brokenness, and I want to stop them. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he closed my file and slid it across the desk. Congratulations, Ms. Voss. You're selected. The fellowship meant working with him directly. Weekly meetings in his office, research collaboration, his name on my thesis. I told myself I could handle it. That proximity meant opportunity. To find evidence. To understand what he was. To protect myself by knowing my enemy. But working with him was worse than watching him from a distance. He was brilliant. He was kind, in a calculated way, remembering my coffee order, asking about my mother, praising my work with specificity that made me feel seen. He was everything a mentor should be, and every moment of his mentorship felt like a transaction being called due. You're my best student, Elena, he told me in the spring of junior year. We were in his office, reviewing my thesis proposal on foster care privatization. You have a mind for systems, for seeing the machinery behind the mask. Do you know how rare that is? Thank you, I said, because I didn't know what else to say. I knew you would be, he continued, almost to himself. From the beginning. I could see it in your application essay. The way you wrote about wanting to understand where you came from. That's rare too. Most people want to escape their origins. You wanted to interrogate yours. My pen stopped moving. My application essay was about educational inequality, I said carefully. He looked at me, and for the first time, the mask slipped. Not much, just a fraction, just enough to show the calculation beneath. But I saw it. I saw that he had made a mistake, revealed that he knew something he shouldn't. Of course, he said smoothly. I must be thinking of another student. So many applications over the years. But he wasn't, and we both knew it. That night, I went back to the contract. I had kept it in a safe deposit box by then, the only copy, the only proof. I studied the signatures, the letterhead, the language. I hired a private investigator through a legal clinic, a law student who needed pro bono hours and asked no questions. I gave her only the names and the date. 2 weeks later, she called me. Hartwell Family Services was a front, she said. No adoption agency, no social services license. It was a private arrangement broker, matching unwanted pregnancies with buyers. It operated in Iowa for 6 years before a state investigation shut it down. The owner died before trial. No records survived officially. And Calloway? Dr. Arthur Calloway purchased guardianship of a female infant in 2006. The birth mother was a 17-year-old from Nebraska. The adoptive mother was Margaret Voss, a waitress from Chicago. The fee was $47,000. Was it legal? A pause. Guardianship transfers can be legal under certain circumstances, but this wasn't a court process. This was a private sale with fabricated paperwork. The birth mother's signature was forged. She never consented to termination of parental rights. And Margaret Voss? Another pause. She wasn't adopting you, Elena. She was brokering you. Hartwell paid her $12,000 of the $47,000. She sold you, and Calloway bought you, and the middleman took the rest. I sat in my apartment. The same apartment Mom's diner wages paid for. The same apartment where she told me I was adopted, and I didn't cry. I had spent 3 years preparing for this moment, and when it arrived, I felt only a cold, clear certainty. My mother didn't love me enough to adopt me. She loved money enough to sell me, and the man who bought me had been shaping my mind for 4 years, watching me grow, measuring his investment. I didn't confront Mom. I didn't confront Calloway. I finished junior year with perfect grades. I accepted the fellowship for senior year. I smiled in his office and took his notes and let him believe I was still the eager student, the grateful beneficiary of his wisdom. But I was building a case. The law student helped me file a FOIA request for the Iowa State investigation records. I contacted the birth mother, still alive, still in Nebraska, still wondering what happened to the baby she was told died at birth. I recorded every meeting with Callaway, legal in Illinois, as long as one party consents. I saved every email, every comment, every moment that proved he knew who I was from the beginning. Senior year, I applied to be valedictorian. Not because I cared about the title, but because the valedictorian speaks at graduation. The entire university listens. The press attends. It's a stage. And I needed a stage. I graduated summa cum laude, top of the sociology department. The committee selected my speech 2 weeks before commencement. A standard address about gratitude, about the community that raises us, about the teachers who believe in us when we don't believe in ourselves. I wrote it carefully. Every word had 2 meanings. Every thank you was an accusation waiting to be revealed. Mom came to graduation. She sat in the audience with a new dress, bought with her own money, I assumed, though I no longer assumed anything about her. She waved when she saw me. I didn't wave back. Callaway sat on stage. Faculty marshal, distinguished professor, silver-haired emblem of academic excellence. He would hand me my diploma. He would shake my hand. He would smile for the cameras. And I would speak first. The arena filled with 6,000 people. Graduates in black gowns, families in summer clothes, the buzz of achievement and relief. I sat in the front row, my speech folded in my pocket, my heart beating so hard I could feel it in my throat. When they called my name as valedictorian, the applause was polite, expected. I walked to the podium. I looked out at the sea of faces. I found Mom in the 6th row, left side. She was crying, the proud tears of a mother who thought she had done her best. I found Callaway on stage, 3 feet to my right. He was smiling, the practiced smile from his faculty photo, the smile of a man who thought his investment had matured. I unfolded my speech. I didn't read it. I had memorized every word. Thank you, President Holloway. Thank you, faculty, families, and friends. And thank you, class of 2026, for 4 years of challenge, growth, and discovery. Standard opening. The crowd settled. Today, we celebrate achievement. But I want to talk about something we don't discuss at graduation. I want to talk about the hidden transactions that make our success possible. The investments, financial, emotional, systemic, that determine who gets to stand here and who doesn't. A murmur, not the usual valedictorian tone. Callaway's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. 4 years ago, I walked into a classroom believing I was the product of a loving adoption. I believed my mother chose me. I believed my professors saw my potential. I believed the system worked. I looked at Mom. Her tears had stopped. She was watching me with a new expression. Fear, dawning and terrible. I was wrong. My mother didn't adopt me. She sold me. For $12,000 to a broker named Hartwell Family Services, who then sold me again. For $47,000 to a man who wanted a daughter he could shape, control, and eventually claim as his own success story. The arena went silent. 6,000 people, and you could hear the air conditioning. That man is sitting on this stage, Dr. Arthur Callaway, my mentor, my professor, the man who has watched me for 4 years with the satisfaction of an investor checking his portfolio. He bought me when I was 6 pounds and 3 ounces. He placed me in a home where I would be grateful, hardworking, and dependent on the system he controlled. He guided me to his university, his department, his fellowship. He measured my value in grades, publications, and potential earnings. I turned to face him. His face had gone gray. You knew, Dr. Callaway. You knew from the first day of freshman year. You knew when you smiled at me in the hallway. You knew when you selected me for the fellowship. You knew when you talked about investment and return and the economics of love. You knew, and you thought I never would. He stood up. Elena, I think we should. Sit down. My voice didn't shake. It cut through the arena like a blade. He sat. I'm not finished. Because there's someone else in this room who needs to hear this. Mom. I found her in the crowd. She was frozen, her hands gripping the armrests. You told me I was adopted. You told me I was loved. You worked double shifts and never complained, and I spent my whole life feeling guilty for your sacrifices. But they weren't sacrifices, were they? They were maintenance, keeping the product in good condition so the buyer would be satisfied. You sold me, and then you spent 18 years making sure I didn't find out. She was shaking her head, mouthing something. No, no, no. But no sound came out. But here's what you both missed. You can buy a child. You can sell a child. You can track her and train her and invest in her future. But you cannot own her mind. You cannot own her will. And you cannot stop her from learning the truth. I reached into my gown and pulled out a folder. The contract. The investigator's report. The recorded conversations. The birth mother's testimony. I filed a report with the FBI this morning. Human trafficking, wire fraud, falsification of adoption records. The agents are waiting outside, and I have enough evidence to bury both of you. I looked at Calloway. He was no longer gray. He was white. His hands gripping the arms of his chair, his eyes fixed on the folder in my hand. You wanted a return on your investment, Dr. Calloway? Here it is. I'm valedictorian. I'm graduating with honors. I'm going to law school on a full scholarship. And I'm going to spend my career dismantling the systems that let men like you buy children like products. I turned back to the audience, to the cameras, to the world that would watch this on YouTube, on TikTok, on every news channel by morning. But most importantly, I'm free. Not because of you, not because of her. Because of me. Because I did the work, I asked the questions, and I refused to be grateful for my own captivity. I stepped away from the podium. The silence held for 1 second, 2, 3, and then the arena erupted. Not applause. Chaos. Shouting. Movement. The flash of cameras as reporters who had been covering a routine graduation realized they were witnessing something else entirely. I walked to Calloway. He was still in his chair, surrounded by faculty who were backing away, distancing themselves from the contamination. I held out my hand. My diploma, Dr. Calloway. You owe me that at least. He didn't move. I reached past him, took the diploma from the stack on the table and tucked it under my arm. One more thing, I said, quiet enough that only he could hear. The birth mother? She's alive. She never gave you permission. And she's waiting outside with the FBI. You bought a stolen child, Dr. Calloway. That's not economics. That's trafficking. And you're going to die in prison, knowing that your investment destroyed you. I walked off stage, through the chaos, through the flashing lights, through the crowd of graduates who were standing, staring, some crying, some filming with their phones. I found the FBI agents at the south entrance, 2 men in suits, exactly where they said they'd be. I handed them the folder. He's on stage. The woman in the 6th row, left side, blue dress. That's Margaret Voss. The birth mother, Sarah Jennings, is in the parking lot. She has additional testimony. The lead agent, Special Agent Morales, I remembered, took the folder and nodded. Ms. Voss, you understand this is just the beginning. There will be interviews, depositions, a trial. It could take years. I know. And you're prepared to testify? Publicly? Your name will be in every headline. I looked back at the arena, at the doors where Calloway was being escorted out in handcuffs, his academic gown trailing, his face finally stripped of all masks. At the 6th row, where Mom was being led away by another agent, her proud tears replaced by something broken and raw. My name was already in a contract, I said. At least this time, I'm choosing what it's attached to. The trial took 14 months. Calloway fought everything: jurisdiction, evidence, his own recorded words. He hired 3 defense attorneys, each more expensive than the last. He claimed the guardianship transfer was legal, that the birth mother's signature was authentic, that I was a disgruntled student fabricating a story to cover academic pressure. The evidence didn't care about his claims. The birth mother, Sarah Jennings, testified with a voice that shook but didn't break. She had been 17, scared, alone. She went to Hartwell believing they would help her find a loving family. She signed one document, a temporary foster placement agreement. She never saw me again. She was told I died of complications 3 days later. She spent 18 years grieving a death that was a sale. The private investigator testified about the forged signatures. The law student testified about the FOIA records. I testified for 4 days, answering every question about my grades, my fellowship, my relationship with Calloway. The defense tried to paint me as ambitious, manipulative, a student who seduced her professor and then turned on him when he rejected her. I didn't break. I had spent 4 years preparing for worse than a courtroom. Margaret Voss. I stopped calling her mom the day of graduation, took a plea deal in exchange for testimony. She confirmed the sale, confirmed the payments, confirmed that Calloway had instructed her on how to raise me, what to emphasize, what to suppress. She cried. She said she loved me. She said she did what she thought was best. The jury didn't believe her. I didn't either. Calloway was convicted on all counts: trafficking, fraud, conspiracy. He was sentenced to 25 years. At sentencing, he finally spoke to me directly. "I did invest in you, Elena," he said, his voice hoarse with age and defeat. "Not as property, as potential. I saw what you could become, and I made it possible. Doesn't that count for something?" I looked at him, the man who bought me, taught me, watched me, and I felt nothing. Not hate, not victory. Just the empty space where a father's love should have been, and the knowledge that I had filled it myself. "You didn't make me possible, Dr. Calloway," I said. "You made me necessary. There's a difference." I started law school 3 months after the sentencing. Northwestern, again, not because of him, but because they offered the best child advocacy program, and because walking those halls as a free woman felt like reclaiming stolen ground. I changed my name legally, not to hide, to choose. Elena Jennings, after the mother who never stopped looking for me, who kept an empty crib in her Nebraska apartment for 18 years, who sent birthday cards to a grave that held no body. We have coffee every Sunday. We don't talk about the past much. We're building something new, something unbought, something earned. I work now with a legal clinic specializing in trafficking survivors, not just the dramatic cases, the border crossings and basement prisons, but the quiet sales, the private arrangements, the children moved through systems that look legal until you shine a light on them. I speak at conferences. I train law enforcement. I tell my story, not for pity, but for pattern recognition. If it happened to me, I always say, it happened to others. And it's still happening. The only question is whether we're willing to see it. Sometimes, in the quiet moments, I think about the girl I was, the 17-year-old who opened an envelope and thought her world was ending, the freshman who walked into a classroom and felt seen by the wrong eyes, the valedictorian who stood on a stage and chose truth over safety. She was brave. She was also broken. She became me, not because of anyone's investment, but because she refused to cash out. The diploma hangs in my office now. Elena Voss, summa cum laude, class of 2026. I keep it as a reminder that the same system that tried to own me also gave me the tools to dismantle it. That education is power, but only when you control the curriculum. That the most important lesson I ever learned wasn't in a classroom, it was in a mirror, looking at a contract, deciding that my price was not my value. I am not for sale. I never was. And neither is anyone else, if we have the courage to say so out loud.